Hello and welcome along to Adobe After Effects with your host Robert Smith. In this video we're going to look at something called Kinetic Typography, which is a fancy way of moving type around the screen. So let's have a look what we mean by that. Something like this. I'll just Command Tab over to QuickTime. I've got a movie prepared. Now this is the look. You can see how the type sort of swings from the top and then swings into position. Okay, that's what we're going to do. Let's have a look at that. How to go about that. Command Tab back to After Effects. First thing we're going to do is New Composition, Apple N, 1280-720. I only work at 1280-720 for convenience, okay, because most of this stuff is going to YouTube, so it's a bit of overkill to get any bigger than that. Duration 20 seconds, 25 frames per second, and a navy blue background. All good. Okay, I'm going to click on the Type tool up here, click on the stage, and you'll notice I get a layer down there, a type layer. I'm going to type in the word design like this, in beautiful Fairmont, very, very handy font. Now I'm going to be swinging this type from the top, so I need to move its anchor point, and there's the anchor point here. It's down the bottom at the moment, so I might Apple Plus zoom in a bit, and again Apple Plus. There's the anchor point there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the Y key down like that and keep holding it down and click and drag up to the top to the center like that. And then I'll zoom back out again. If I fit up to 200%, that'll fit it nicely inside the window. Okay, now what I'd like to do is duplicate that layer. So Apple D. You notice how I moved the anchor point first and then duplicate it? It'll save you a lot of trouble. So if I Apple D, duplicate that, and if I hold the Shift and arrow keys, you can just move it down into position to about here. Double click on it, and center. Now I'm using the shortcut of the Command, Shift, and the comma key, like that. And I'll do the same thing again. I'll duplicate Apple D to duplicate that. Shift key and arrows, just move it down like you would in any other application. And okay, the word I want there is Enmore, like this, which is a fine suburb in the city of Sydney in Australia. Okay, and I'll just move it up a little bit. And we're ready to get animating. Okay, now to do this, I need to make these layers 3D layers, and I need to move them all down a bit first. So I'm going to select all of the layers by holding the Shift key down here and just moving them down a little bit before I start. Okay, looking good. Now I'm going to work on the layer design, just this one layer here like this, and how it works. We need to create 3D layers, make these 3D layers so they'll swing in what's called, they call it the X space, but towards you and away from you. To do that, we need to convert these 3 layers here to 3D layers by just dragging down here like that. And now they're all 3D layers. Now nothing much has changed really. The only difference is that we now have a new property to animate, which we'll have a look at in a minute. Now if you don't see that here like this, click on your toggle switches down the bottom, down here, and they'll come into sight. Okay, great. So let's get to animating this word design. To do that, I'm just going to move it over here a little bit so we can see it. And click on the design layer down here, like that. A good way of doing it, because we're going to use our rotation, rather than twirling down, then twirling this down and keeping twirling, we get all our properties. We don't really want that. We just want the rotation property. So if I press the letter R, like that, it'll give me the rotation involved with that layer. And as you can see, we've got X rotation, which will exactly what we want. It'll swing towards us and away from us. We have Y rotation. We can do this with Y rotation if you want to swing that way as well. Or we can do it with the Z, which is like a more traditional rotation. Okay, let's get to adding some rotation to this. I'll start with a keyframe on the X rotation here. By clicking that, it'll give me a keyframe here, and this is the number I'm interested in, the second number here. And I've worked out some numbers, so I'm just going to click on there like that and type in 100. is the first number. Press return. You'll notice how it's swung away from me by 100 degrees, which is what I want. Then I'm going to zoom in on my timeline a little bit, like this, so I can see 1 second intervals. I'm going to go to about 1 second in time. I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to type in -39, which will swing it towards me, which is exactly what I want. And then I'll go to the 1 second again, another second, and 34 this time. So it swings back that way, and then we'll go along to -28. Like now, these numbers are this sort of good numbers. You can use any numbers you like, but these numbers seem to work okay. So 24, we're down to. I'll just hurry this along, and -19, like that. -19, then 14. I'm changing the same number all the time. The second number in the X rotation, like that. 14, then we'll go along 1 more second to -9. Okay, I lied about that. Here's another second. We'll drop that down to 5, and the last one we'll make it 0. And that should give us quite a nice swing. So let's have a look. 0 like that. Now to play that, I'll just go back to the start and play it. That's what we want, a nice drop at the start, then a graduated little swing like that. Quite subtle, really. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I want that to happen a lot faster than that. Okay, to do that, what I'm going to do, I'm going to select all of these keyframes by dragging a marquee over the top, hold the Option key down, and just drag to the left. And what that does, they'll keep the relationship, the time relationship between each of those keyframes. Let's have a look at it now when it goes for a swing. Now, a good idea, of course, is when you're doing something like this is to shorten your timeline. So I'm going to put my playback head there and press the letter N on the keyboard. And now I can watch it over and over without having to see the whole timeline. Okay, very nice, very happy with that. So let's add some, I'll select all those keyframes. I'm going to go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease In. Now, it won't be a massive effect, but it'll just be very subtle. Actually, I might take that off. Let's have a look and see what it looks like without it. Probably looks better without it. That's because the keyframes are so close together. When they're close together, that ease can be a bit of a problem. So just leave that ease out. Okay, I'm going to select those, Command C, like this. Go to the center layer and make sure my playback head's back at the start like that. And Apple V to paste. And to end more, and Apple V to paste again. So now when I press the space bar, they all do exactly the same thing, which is not what we want at this stage. Okay, so I'm just going to go down here and fit up to 200% again. Just move it across a bit there. Okay, so we've got this. What I can do now is I can just actually move them apart just a little bit like this. So just move the starting point of each layer. So we get this effect, which is quite a neat effect indeed. We like that. That's quite basic. It looks quite good. Okay, I might move them a bit closer together, like this. Actually, okay, but before I do that, I can just leave it like that if I like. It looks quite efficient. But we can add a bit of style to it. Just put these back at the start here like this. I don't have to be exact. It doesn't really matter. I'll just drag those back. And I'll put this playback head about here. I suppose that'll do. About there is fine. And now I'm going to do what's called parenting. I'm going to parent the center layer to the design layer by grabbing this Pickwick thing here. Just dragging it down onto the design layer like that. And grabbing this Pickwick and dragging that onto the word center like that. So what that basically does is it's a parenting operation, and what that means is that one layer will inherit what the other layer is doing. So let's have a look at that, what that looks like. Very dramatic, look at that, very dramatic indeed. You can see how it seems to have amplified the animation. And what I'm going to do is now I'm going to take them and move them apart a little bit like this and see what happens, see what it looks like. Now that's the look we're looking for, a nice swinging look, each line starting a little bit after the other, and a great bit of kinetic typography. Now what I want to do is I want to take that as a group and move it around, and I'll show you what I mean by that. To do that, I'm going to start a new composition, Command N, same setup as the last one, 20 seconds long, blue background. Now I'm going to call this one main timeline. We'll call it main timeline 1, like that, and OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that thing we just did, this comp 6 here, and drag it into this main timeline. Now it should do exactly the same thing, like that, but it's now only one layer long. One layer for those 3 type layers. And so what I can do with that, I can move this around like it was just one object, which is great. Now the first thing I want to do is to move my anchor point here. To do that, hold the Y key down and grab it and just drag it down to about there, like that. Okay, so now when it rotates, it'll rotate around that point. So what I want to do, I want to play the timeline. Let's see how far, to about there. And at this point here, I want it to start to rotate. So if I select this layer, I press the letter R for rotation, and put a keyframe there like that. And then I might just use this to rotate it around like that. Actually, I might rotate it to minus 90 degrees. So it's exactly horizontal like that. Now it's a little bit big, so I need to go back to the start, or back to the previous keyframe by pressing the letter J. I'm going to add another property by holding the Shift key down, and that is the scale. So Shift S will give me scale, and Shift P will give me position. So I'll select those two, put a keyframe in there, go to here by pressing the letter K to the next keyframe, and then I'm going to scale it down a bit so it fits nicely about there. And the position I'm going to move up to about here. So let's have a look at that. So now we've got looks like 3 individual lines animating. We've read them like that, and then it will animate into position, and then we can add some more. And we keep doing that over and over again. But I'm going to speed that up first of all by selecting those keyframes and drag them to the left like that. I think this could do with a bit of easy ease in, like this. Okay, let's have a look at that. That's more like it. I want to go back to this comp 6. Now I can do it a couple of ways, by double clicking here or just double clicking here. I'll just double click here for a minute. And what I want to put on is a bit of blur. So while it's swinging, we get this little bit of blur. It looks much more realistic. If I click on here, this little blur icon, and then go down here like that and enable the blur by clicking here in this little square. Now you have to do that first, turn it on and then enable it. So let's, for each layer, let's have a look at that. Much better, much more realistic. If I go to my main timeline now, let's watch that. Okay, great, that's what we want. We want that. And we probably want that to blur to this layer as well. So I'm going to turn that on in this comp and again enable it for this layer. So when it, fantastic, that's it. Okay, that's a kinetic typography look where you swing type. You can swing any way you like, and then sort of group it because it's in a composition, and put it in another composition. Then you can move it around as a group, and then start the whole process over again and add more and more compositions of kinetic typography. I hope you enjoyed that. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.